My tale takes place a few weeks back while camping in the bush. This was my first break in several months from work, as I'm now a roadie for international bands. I decided to go camping with two old mates up in the bush for a few days, far away from the world as possible. I'm an experienced bushman and camped in the bush many a times over the years. We heard about a place, way out at the back of a small town named Kyogle, at the back of Mount Lindsay. The locals call it Yowie country. A Yowie is an Australian equivalent of Bigfoot, an aboriginal mystic creature like the bunyip. So, just before the entrance to Kyogle is the gateway to the national park. After a few hours of driving, we finally found the old road that led to our purpose campsite. It was located on an old disused logging trail. Not many people, in fact no one, goes anywhere near here, which made it better for us. We left the truck 5 miles from where we were camped, and made our way up through the dense forest along the barely recognizable track, avoiding snakes and jumping ants, before we found our site. It took about 20 minutes to set up the site, tarpaulin over the branches to prevent rain from wetting us, a pit to bury our beer to keep it cool, and also food buried in it as well, and a decent fire pit. Gathered woods and twigs, we were ready for a good night of playing cards, drinking beer, and the usual BS. The night was clear as I remember, and hot. No moon, but the stars were like little eyes peering down at us. I had to go to water the old lizard, and stumbled off with the torch into the bush, hearing the lad's cat calling out, saying, "Beware of the boogeyman." I was more concerned about the bloody death adders and brown snakes, never mind about the bloody boogeyman. As I was doing my business and gazing at the stars, a strange and horrible smell, like something rotten, overwhelmed me. Like as if someone let off a fart that stunk so bad, it made my eyes burn in water. I stumbled back, gagging, but as I was stumbling back to the campsite, I thought I heard a deep growl, like when your stomach rumbles when you had nothing to eat but louder. The hairs on the back of my neck rose as I quickly hurried back to the site. I told the other two, but they said that it might have been some animal, so we went back to our card playing. It was 11:45 by now, and I was dead beat. I had my sleeping bag already unrolled, and crawled off after saying night to the other two, and slid into the bag. It wasn't long before I passed out. I don't know how long I was asleep, but the three of us were suddenly woken up by the strangest, loudest, spookiest piercing scream that I've ever heard. It was not human. It was inhuman. We sat up and looked at each other when we heard loud crashing coming towards our campsite, like a bulldozer rampaging through the bush. Whatever it was big. Then I saw it. Something massive, well built, coming crashing through the forest. I couldn't make out the details, but it looked strangely like a human, or even better, a gorilla. The smell will haunt me to the end of my days. It was that rotting stench like a corpse. This thing stood over 7 feet as it came tearing through the campsite, then vanished into the night. We all jumped up, gibbering like madmen about what we just witnessed. Was it just some hippie that just smoked some potent weed? No, can't have been. Too tall and well built to be a hippie. But it smelled like one though. I tell you this, none of us slept that night. I had the hatchet ready while one of my mates had a huge branch. The other, I don't know what he had, but we waited until dawn popped its head over the ridge before we left. What we saw in the daylight frightened us. The small saplings were all bent back and snapped. Some of our gear was trampled beyond repair, but we were shaken by our experience that we drove into town. We didn't tell the locals about what we saw or heard, in case they thought we were nuts. I did find out, though, that a few weeks after we saw that, someone else had the same experience, a few miles from where we were. I don't know what we saw, but I'm put off from camping up there. Maybe the locals are right when they saw that yowies exist in that region. I live in Geelong, Australia, and this sighting occurred a couple years ago. I don't live in a very big house, so my bedroom is really close to the kitchen. I always slept with my door open back when I was 15, 16 years old. My parents' bedroom is also close to the kitchen, which is where this creature was standing. The time was around 3:30 a.m. I remember waking up. I would wake up randomly sometimes. It doesn't happen anymore. And I was facing my wall with my back towards the kitchen. I rolled over to my other side, and as soon as I did this, my eyes adjusted to the light in the kitchen. Then they fixated to the door, which led to where my parents' room was, which is also the entry into my kitchen. This is when I spotted the creature. It wasn't very big, measuring around 80 centimeters. It resembled a goblin or gremlin. I could not tell for sure what it was. It was slightly dark, but bright enough for me to get a rough figure. It had very distinct ears, which is what gave it away. At the time, I couldn't move, probably because I was about to crap myself. Me and this creature exchanged looks for about a minute. It was just peeking around the side of the door, looking at me, standing very still. All I did was look, because I was afraid that if I moved, it would run off or attack me. After watching it for some time, paralyzed, I quickly rolled back over to face the wall. I turned back to see if it was still watching me, but it had disappeared. The creature has never returned since then. This story happened to my grandpa's sister. My grandpa lived in a village along with his siblings and parents when he was young. His sister was 21 years at that time. It was winter evening. She was returning from a neighbor's home. The distance between the two houses was almost a kilometer. As it was winter, the road was covered with mist and wind was very chilly. My grand aunt was carrying a torch in her hand because of the darkness and mist. She was moving quickly. Suddenly, her torch focused on something standing in the middle of the road. It was a dark, shadow-like creature. The scary thing was, even when the torch focused on the thing, it was pitch black. None of its features were clear, only the eyes were visible. They were glowing red. She got startled and moved back. The creature moved towards her. As it was coming closer, it was constantly changing shape. The only thing common was his black texture. My grand aunt started screaming for help. She ran back towards the neighbor's home. When she reached their home, it vanished within the mist. The neighbors were surprised to see her panting like that. They asked her to come in. She was reluctant to go out in the night. There were no telephones at that time, so they sent their son to inform my great-grandpa about her. My great-grandpa came to take her home with him. She didn't speak a single word until morning. In the morning, she recited her incident to the whole family. My grandpa's grandmother explained that it was a Chihuahua. Shapeshifter. It is kind of a notorious spirit that scares people by changing its shape or size. It looks for people who are alone in desolate areas. My grand aunt was alone, so she fell prey to it. She was lucky to get away from it. My grandpa said the incident haunted his sister so much that she didn't go out of house for a week. She's 73 years old, but still avoids staying alone, even at home. I'm a 20-year-old female living in Ontario, Canada. The incident that I'm going to relate took place 10 years ago, but it has been bothering me ever since. And when I found this site, I decided to share my story and see if anyone has any opinions. Of course, as it was an entire decade ago, this is by no means an urgent request for information, as the monster or whatever it was has not reappeared since. I suppose I'm just more curious than anything else, and want to know if anyone else has seen anything similar. What I'm going to do is describe the room and what I saw, and then explain why it couldn't have been a dream. I sleep in the same room as I did when I was 10, but the layout has changed. When this story takes place, my bed was in the corner of the room, so the headboard was against one wall, and the right side was against the other. At the foot of my bed was an armoire, which was not pushed against the wall because there was an electrical outlet behind it, which my lamp plugged into. The armoire was maybe 4 or 5 inches away from the wall. The door to my room is in the corner farthest from my bed. Also, there is a street lamp right outside my window, so even at night my room is never very dark. When I was a kid, I would never close my eyes while waiting to fall asleep. I don't really know why. I would lie in my bed listening to books on tape and staring at the ceiling. But after what I saw that night when I was 10, I always kept my eyes tightly shut. The first thing that happened was I heard a soft creak and looked to see one of the doors of my armoire opening gently, not abruptly at all. And then it closed just as softly. At this point I was not afraid. I was actually oddly calm considering how nervous of a child I was. I remember thinking, it must have just been the wind, which makes no sense because even if the wind could have done that, my window was closed. Then I saw it. A monster or creature or something, I don't know. In the space between my armoire and the wall, I saw a face. It was green with red eyes and horribly red lips. It had a very skinny body with long arms. The body was humanoid. Its head was very round and looked smooth. I did nothing for a moment, but then it gave me this terrible grin, and I bolted from my room all the way to the basement where my father was working and told him. Of course, he couldn't find anything, told me it was just a nightmare, and made me go back to bed. I would be tempted to also believe it was just a dream, but these are the 3 reasons I know it can't have been. Firstly, my vision was not terrible at that age, but I did need glasses, which I obviously didn't wear to bed. When I saw that thing, it was visible, but just a little bit blurry, and no dream I've had, no matter how realistic, has replicated my vision without glasses. Secondly, I never woke up. When I have a bad dream and I wake from it, it takes me a few minutes to reorient myself, realize that it was a dream and that everything's okay. There was no transition like that. I saw the thing and ran. I never woke up. Thirdly and lastly, I mentioned that I fell asleep listening to the audiobooks. Well, I continued to hear my audiobook playing smoothly through the whole event, not stopping or distorting like I know it would have in a dream. I have never read that book since. After that, I never saw the thing again, although I had nightmares about it for the next year. If anyone has any ideas about this, I would love to hear them. Even if you think I'm crazy, that's a valid opinion too. I hope my account was clear, and thank you very much for listening. Hey everyone, Dismal Hero here, and I'd like to thank you for checking out the video. Please subscribe if you haven't already, like and share the video if you enjoyed it. I'm always looking for new and exciting stories, so if you have a scary encounter that has happened to you, please email it to me in the link in my description. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you back here again next time.